Hi everyone, this is Misha Cahnmann-Taylor. I'm your professor for this class, and you're about to begin Module 2, so welcome. You've introduced yourselves, and most, if not all of you, have found your groups for discussion and identified the schools that you're going to study to actually observe bilingual education. If we were in a classroom, I might ask you, how many of you all have already seen early childhood bilingual education or some form of bilingual education in actual practice? And I wish I could look around the room and see who you are. In the state of Georgia, it's just remarkable how much growth has happened in the field of bilingual education and the practice. The first dual immersion school was opened by Del Giles, who took this class so many years ago and asked herself why there weren't dual immersion schools when obviously all the research was pointing to how effective and special it was for youth to be able to study in more than one language from a very young age. And she decided to implement it. And then just a few short years after she did that, through her dissertation process, another student, a master's student, Carrie Woodcock, said the same thing. Inspired by Dell, opened the second dual immersion school in Georgia, and that was called Dell's school was Unidos in Clayton County, and Carey's school was World Language Academy in Gainesville, or Hull County. And that is still running. Carey is now opening another school, an international school, where Japanese and English are the two languages in use. And we've seen this massive growth, I think over 20, maybe over 30 dual language schools now in our state, where just a few short years ago there were none. So it's very exciting. I'm sure those of you that are in this class that have traveled have seen how extensive and common it is for youth around the world to grow up learning to read, write, speak, and listen to more than one language. And this country is just catching up. So much of the semester that we'll spend together is acquiring the language, the terminology, to name so much of the social phenomena connected to language study that we already know. How do we decide who is, quote, native or non-native speaker? And when we're in graduate school, how to question these overly simplistic binaries and complicate them and critique them and ask, what does it mean to label a child non-native or a learner of any age non-native? At one point, how many years later does that label give way to something else, to something new? I was just out this weekend with someone, a neighbor of mine who's been in Athens, Georgia for about 20 years. She is originally born in Bosnia and left Bosnia during a war to come to the University of Georgia as a student so many years ago. And yet we were out in the evening, and a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, asked my friend, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Athens. I live in Athens. I'm from Athens." And she said, "No, where are you from?" Now, I bet you know what she means. She detected an accent to my friend's English and was sure that she must be from somewhere else, even though it's very likely that she's been living in Athens, Georgia, longer than the person who was asking her, insisting she must be from elsewhere. So these are the kinds of things that we as language teachers and scholars of language education must look at carefully. How do you do the readings? This week you'll see there are so many readings. There are too many readings for anyone to finish, perhaps. But I give you more rather than less, with the idea that you will always read anything from our foundational textbook by Baker, Colin Baker's Bilingual Education, the 5th edition, which I happen to have right here. And you will also do your best to read at least 2 or 3 of the articles that I give to you as well. When you make your comments, I don't expect that you will write a long tome. I'm looking for something like about 200, 300, maybe as many as 500 words, but don't feel you have to write so much. Consider it an academic conversation. What about the right readings strikes you as important, perhaps even connected to your own personal experience? If you only remain with your personal experience, like the story I just retold, my friend being asked, where is she from? But don't relate it to the reading, such as Ben Rampton's discussion of who is native and non-native, or perhaps some of the Baker chapters where he discusses competence and the complications of deciding who Is it highly competent or native-like bilingual? And how do we assess these things? Or perhaps even the illusion or delusion that we as educators tend to perpetuate, as Grinberg and Saavedra talk about, regarding who belongs or does not in a bilingual program, and what does that labeling lead to or serve. If you're a doctoral student or you are looking towards your MED or MAT portfolio, you might want to pay more attention to the readings that have theoretical background with Foucault or Vygotsky. Lantoff is very well-known theorist, Vygotskyan sociocultural theorist, and really looks at how do we assess learners based on their growth from prior knowledge, what they know, and their work with a more expert other to L plus or N+1, learning a little bit beyond their competence, or looking at Foucault's theories to understand how these labels structure and either enable or may oppress language learners and teachers. So you can choose. This is your class. I would like you to make it as rich as you can. And I have structured the discussion posting so that you are accountable to interacting with your peers about the readings each week. And I'll provide some opening notes, as you've seen in the beginning for each module. As always, feel free to send me questions. We've been introduced. If I'm lucky enough to have a TA, then you know who to also contact with questions. Don't hesitate. This should be as personalized as we can make it. And I'll make this one a short video. Bye-bye. Thank you.